All right, let me begin by going through what I usually get through in a first class that starts dealing with Adobe Illustrator. First of all, Adobe Illustrator is down here on the bottom. If it's not down there, it's in your Applications folder, in the Adobe Illustrator folder, all the way at the bottom right here. Just to let everybody know, when I click, you'll see a little red dot, making sure that I've clicked. And when I double click, you'll see two little red dots that kind of go around there. Also, every time I type on my keyboard, you will see the letters show up on the bottom of the screen. All right, so Adobe Illustrator. Let's go ahead and start opening it up. Now, when it comes to Adobe Illustrator, it is a vector-based program, and that's different from a pixel-based program. And we'll talk about what the differences are probably when we get into Photoshop. Now, the first time you see Adobe Illustrator open, you'll see this screen. And you can go ahead and make a new print document. So I'll go ahead and click Print Document right here. Everything should pretty much be set up okay. You can put a title in here, since this is me doing my Andy demo right here. And then size, a letter size sheet of paper. That's like a regular sheet of paper that you'd get through the printer. It's in inches, everything else is good. You can also change your orientation here if you want a vertical sheet of paper or a horizontal one. So let's go ahead and start like this. Now let's talk about the tools we're going to be using, especially on this first day. This on the left side is called your toolbar. So whenever I say to go to the left side of your screen in your toolbar, that's what this bar is called. At the top of the screen, under Illustrator, you will see, it say Illustrator on the top and File. So whenever I say to go to the top of your screen, I'm usually talking about this area right here. Notice how it says Illustrator up here because we're in the program called Adobe Illustrator. If we would click on the desktop, even though you still see this, we are no longer in the program Adobe Illustrator. We're in the Finder. Adobe Illustrator is still running because you can see this little dot on the bottom of the screen. Safari is also still running because you see the dot under there. But if we click Adobe Illustrator, it now says Illustrator at the top of the screen. So left side is your toolbar, top of the screen right here. And on this right side, you're going to see things called panels. They used to be called palettes, so if you hear me say something like go to your whatever palette, this is what I'm talking about. At the top of the screen, you see something that says Essentials. What I want you to do for the purposes of this class is to click Essentials and go down to Like Photoshop. When you click that, these panels on the right side change, and they change to just a different view and a different layout. You'll see things like your Navigator panel. And your info panel is right behind it. You'll also see a color panel, an appearance panel, a layers panel. This thing is going to become really important, so make sure you know where your layers panel is. Okay, so we've got all our panels set up. We've got all of our things set up here. Hey, one more thing. If you accidentally lose a panel, like let's say layers gets deleted or whatnot, or maybe things get moved and you don't know where anything is, you can always go back up to this Like Photoshop section and click Like Photoshop again, and it'll bring it all back up to the way you remember it. Alright, so this first tool is called the Selection tool, and if you hit the V button, you will automatically be brought to your Selection tool, V. We're going to be using this a lot. It's a black arrow. The one underneath it is a direct selection tool. We're not going to be using this one as much at first, but I'll show you what it does later. But the selection tool is going to be the first one that we use quite a bit. What we're going to do too is this rectangle tool. It's got a little M under it. Notice when I hover over it, it'll say rectangle tool M. So if I hit the M button on my keyboard, it'll change to that tool without me even clicking it. This is important. When you're starting to learn Illustrator, don't always go up to these things up here and don't always go over clicking. Teach yourself to use the letters and the keyboard. Use both hands when you're designing, and that's going to make your workflow go faster and smoother. You're going to be a much more valuable individual if you can do things quickly and efficiently. All right, so let's hit the M button to get over to our rectangle tool. And I'm going to go ahead and make a rectangle right here in the middle of the screen. And if everybody wants to do that at this point too, they can make one rectangle. Great. Made a rectangle. I clicked and dragged. Let's go back to the move tool again. All right, let's talk about this rectangle. Right now, it's got like a blue line around it and these little boxes. Okay? Let's click off of it and you'll actually see the color of it. It's got its black outline and it's white on the inside. All right, let's click it again. When you click it and you see the blue outline, that means it's selected. When you click off of it, it is no longer selected. All right, selected, not selected. Selected. When it's selected, you can start doing things like changing the color. Let's look down here at the bottom of the toolbar. You see the two colors that we have here. The one on top is the fill color, and the one underneath it is the stroke. Okay, so let's start with the fill color to begin with, this white box. When I click the white box, double click the white box, you'll see that this color picker comes up. You could go ahead and click on these things, but I recommend not. Just keep this one clicked, the H. That's going to make things a lot easier for you. And you'll see a histogram here on the right. A histogram is, in this case, actually, I don't even think this is called a histogram. I don't know why I said that. These are all of your hues. So these are all the names of the colors. So we've got red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, and then red again. Okay, so here's the actual colors. Let's say I want a green. On this side, I have the different values of the colors. So here's a real light green up in the upper left. Here's a real bright green and a real dark green all the way to the blacks. So once you choose what color you want, choose the value of your color too. So on the inside, I'm going to make this bright blue and click OK. Now the stroke, when I click it, that becomes on the front. And if I double click it, I can choose this color too. And I'm going to go ahead and choose a really bright red and click OK. When I click off of it with the selection tool, you'll see those colors. I'm going to click back on it one more time. And we're going to talk about that stroke, that outline. Because you can see red, but you can't really see it too well. Okay, because it's really tiny. Click on it again. And click on the stroke over here on the right side. It's a stroke panel. Right now it says that the stroke is 1 point big. So with this clicked, I can take the stroke and change the size. Wow, that's clicking a lot. But when I raise this, I can start seeing my stroke because it becomes really big. Click off of it, and there you go. So I have made a rectangle that has a red stroke and a blue fill. All right. With the selection tool, you notice that I can click on this and move it around. Okay, that's pretty easy and kind of self-explanatory. We can also change the size. So if I grab any of these corners, I can change the size of the box. Okay, I can also rotate the box. If I get close to a corner without touching it, notice how my cursor changes. You see how it's got a semicircle kind of shape to it? I can now click and drag to rotate. So I can take something and put it and rotate it. All right? So that's all very important. I'm going to take this and I'm going to move this to the side right now. And I'm going to use my rectangle tool and I'm going to make another rectangle. But before I do, notice how I'm clicking and dragging so you can see a rectangle happening. Let's say I made this rectangle and I don't want it anymore. We're going to talk about undo. Now if you look at your keyboard, because this is going to be something you're going to do on the keyboard, next to the space bar on either side, you see a button that might look like an apple. It definitely has a knot on it, or it might say command. It looks like this, the command button, right? When you hold that down and hit the letter Z, it's going to undo the last thing you did. So I'm going to hold that button down with my thumb, and then with my forefinger hit Z. Undo. I just undid that. If I do it again, Command Z, it's going to move that box back. If I do it again, it's going to move it again, and it's going to go back in time. That's also found up here in Edit, Undo. Notice right here it shows you that key command. There's also a redo. That's holding the Shift button, Command, and Z. So if we try that, Shift, Command, Z, I'll make that bigger again, Shift, Command, Z again, and I'll move it over. That key command, Command Z, is going to be very important to remember. Shift, Command, Z, put it back. Now when I make a rectangle, let's say I want to make a perfect rectangle. So a perfect rectangle in this case would be a square. If I tried to click and hold to make a square, I could try really hard, but I would never make a perfect one unless I held the Shift button. Notice that when I hold the Shift button while I'm making this rectangle, it keeps it a square. It keeps the proportions of a square. Now I let go. There it is, perfectly a square. If I want to keep this a square, but I want to change the size, notice when I start changing the size, I can make it a rectangle. I don't want it to be a rectangle, so I can hold the Shift button, and while I do that, it will keep the same proportions. So it'll still be a square, it'll just be smaller. Same thing with this. If I grab the corners, I'd be changing the proportions, but if I hold the Shift button, it'll stay a rectangle of that size. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make 3 boxes. So I've already got that one. Let's go ahead and make this one. And I'm going to make one more box right here. This top box I'm going to click on, and I'm going to make it yellow on the inside. And this box right here, I'm going to make it red on the inside. And I'm going to make the stroke green. Alright, so I have 3 squares on top of each other. This one's on the top, this one's underneath it, and this one's underneath all of them. They're on different layers. So if I move this around, I can't really get it behind it from here. I can, however, get it behind it using my Layers palette. On my Layers palette, if I click this little arrow, you'll see that it goes down and you can see 3 things within the layer, 3 different paths. There's a yellow one on top, a blue one underneath that, and a red one underneath that. Notice when you grab one of them and move them, I can move it, so I just moved the yellow one underneath everything, and in my window, it went underneath everything. This blue one, maybe I want that underneath everything. Just drag it underneath everything like that. So that's important. Give me just a second. Okay. So now that I have those and we know how to do the order, let me show you the quick key commands to do that order. So right now I've got the blue behind everything, and I've got the red one on top of everything. Up in the top of the screen under Object, we have Arrange, and we can change the order this way. Right now we only have 3 things, so my layer palette doesn't, it's pretty easy to move these 3 things around. But when you guys are working on this, you'll have hundreds of layers. So you're not going to be able to use this as efficiently. We will, however, be able to take this, and under Object Arrange, we see these key commands right here for bringing things to the front, sending things to the back, and bringing them forward and bringing them back. So it's the Command button and then these squared off brackets. So let's try that right now. Command button, and this right bracket, I'm bringing that forward. And the other bracket, I'm bringing it back. Forward and back. So let's bring it all the way to the back again. If I hit Shift Command and that front bracket, it'll bring it all the way to the front. Or Shift Command and that other bracket all the way to the back. Those are going to be very important for getting these shapes above things or underneath things. Okay? Let's see. Let's talk a little bit more about shapes and colors. So this one, we've got this green outline and this red inside. Let's say, for example, I'm going to just make this a little bigger, that I want there to be a green outside, but I don't want any color on the inside. I don't even want white on the inside, because you see if I do white, oops, make sure it's selected when I change the color. So I'll click it, double click that, go to white, click OK. I can't see things underneath it. But with that white one that's selected, now that I have the fill white, you'll see this little thing under here. It's a little none color thing. It's got a little red line. If I click that, hey, we've now got a box that has nothing on the inside. All right, so I can see straight through it, but I still has a stroke. All right, you can as well, I don't know why you'd want to do it, but you can take this stroke and also make it invisible, so you have nothing. Or what I like to do, I don't usually like stroke. When I do my own art, I make sure the fill is a color, but I usually don't have any color for the stroke. So you guys can start playing around with that. There's one more thing I'd like to do, and that has to deal with selecting multiple things and putting them together as a group. Here is one object, or 3 objects I should say. They're all different paths. I can select them all at once by clicking and dragging over all of them. When I click and drag over all of them, they kind of become a little bit of a, they're grouped together kind of, and I can click and drag off of it and move them somewhere else. They're not grouped forever though, so if I click off of it and come back, they're still separate. If you want to group them forever, select all of them and hold the Command button and the letter G. Command G. And if you look, it's now a group. Now every time I click them, they will move together. If I want to ungroup them, it's Shift Command G. And those have just ungrouped, and now I can go back and change where things are. Let's say I want to get, I want to get just 2 of these, but not all 3 of them. So let's say I want the 2 that have red strokes. Instead of making a box to try and select them, I can click on one and hold the Shift button when I click on the next one. Notice I've just selected those. I can move those away. Command Z will undo what I just did. So that's how grouping works, and that's how you change the size of things, and that's how you rotate things and whatnot. A couple more things before I go. Behind the rectangle tool, if you click and hold it, you'll see that there's other tools. Notice too, there's a little black arrow underneath. Whenever you see that little black arrow underneath any of these tools, it means that there's another option. So if I click and hold there, you'll see that there's also an ellipse tool. So now if I click and drag that, I make a circle. Remember, the Shift button will help me make a perfect circle instead of an oblong ellipse. You'll see other ones like stars and polygons and flares. I recommend not using this flare. It's just going to get confusing. But stuff like the star tool, if I would make a star, you see I make a nice 5-point star. Or if I just click, I can say, hey, I want my star to have 8 points. I want my radius 1 to be, 5 inches big. And radius 2, I want to be 3 inches big. I click OK. I just made a star that fits all of those proportions. All right, I'm going to just take everything and delete it because, hey, ooh, actually, you know what? Don't want to delete it. Command Z. Let's talk about saving before I delete it. If I go to File, Save, and Save As, I haven't saved this yet. You can tell I haven't saved it yet because there's a little star next to it. But because I've never saved before, if I click Save or Save As, it's going to do the same thing. It's going to go to Save As. So I'm going to go to Save just to prove. Click Save, and notice this little window pops up that says Save As. When you save as, it's going to ask you where you want to save it. You can go ahead and save it to your desktop. It's going to ask you to title it, and then you're going to be able to go ahead and click Save. It might come up with one other option about Illustrator options. Go ahead and click OK. Now that's saved as is. Notice the little star went away. As soon as I start moving things, notice that star came back the little one right here. It's saying, hey, it hasn't been saved and you've moved stuff around. At this point, if I go to File, Save, it will save over the thing I just saved it as. And no windows will come up. I can do that right now. File, Save. Bam, saved it. The star's gone. It saved it over the last file I had. Or let's say I wanted to save a different version. So let's say I've got this one saved with all yellow ones. And let me see, I'm going to take all of these. I'm going to change the color of the inside to blue ones. And let's say I wanted to save a copy as yellow, and now I want to save a copy as blue. I can go to File, Save As. Maybe I'll call this blue. It gives me this option so I can change the name of it and click Save. Okay. Let's look at my desktop. And you'll see that I have the blue one and the yellow one. So Save As will help you save multiple versions of something, and Save will let you just keep saving over the last one that you have. All right, the next demo is going to be on the pen tool. So this is the hardest tool in the program. I think you guys are going to do fine. So good luck with that next tutorial.